Welcome, guys, to the Rashmi Khilnani show. This is Rashmi Khilnani calling in from London. Big welcome. This is our third segment, and we have our special guest tonight is Laura Magdalene Eisenhower. I'm really, really excited to have her on our show. And, sorry for the technical difficulties at the beginning of this show. So here we are in another beautiful, we've just had this fantastic new moon in Gemini. And, some of us have done some good new moon ceremonies and so on. And for all of you that don't know, I'm co-producer of this film called I, God, which is different perspectives on the path to the divine, with my co-producers Neil Donald Walsh and Robert Friedman, and we have many spiritual leaders and people off the street speaking on their perspectives on God, what they believe in, heaven and hell, and so on. And so it's available on Amazon.com and Beyond Words. So do check in on that, and my books are on RashmiKhilnani.com. So I'd like to welcome now our special guest, Laura Magdalene Eisenhower. She's an incredible teacher, way shower, whistleblower, just an incredible energy representing the awakening of the goddess within and so much more. So with great respect and great love, I welcome Laura on our show. Are you there, Laura?
Yes, I am. Hi there.
Hi there.
Good
How are you
here.
doing?
I'm good. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you once again on the show. We did the 2013 and Beyond a year or two ago. So what are you finding, Laura, is your greatest challenge on your journey right now, because you're juggling so many incredible things in your life, with the healing practice and the speaking at so many different events and your own radio show and so on.
I think, just finding balance is always key. Really paying attention to just where my energy is at and, making the priority, just really about my kids and home and just introducing them to all this stuff so things aren't so compartmentalized where I have this career over here and I do this over there. It's like really consolidating and integrating everything has been the challenge. And I think the greatest challenge is just handling 3D stuff still because obviously we're multidimensional and we're not 3D beings, but I like to say it's kind of the box they want to keep us in. And so I'm having a difficult time, I guess you could say, with the school systems and just navigating my kids through this particular part of their journey because I know once they get through that, they'll have a lot more freedom to, navigate based on their own internal wisdom and what they're passionate about. So I think that's the toughest part right now is just handling that and what it does to me and just reminding myself that, we'll get through it and it's going to be okay.
Well, they're about 16 years old now, are they?
Yes,
so,
they are.
So they just have another 2-3 years maybe until they decide what they want to do next vis-a-vis the education system.
Yeah, they're getting really close. There's just a lot of legal stuff connected to bad attendance and work not being done, and that wasn't the case when I was in school. And so it's just really changed. There's just a lot more pressure and legal ramifications. It's just like, what?
Wow, that's crazy. And so I'm always awestruck by how you manage to be such an incredible mother and still travel so much. So when you're doing all these events, in other parts of America, do the kids come along, or is it sort of a mishmash of different logistics?
A little bit of everything. They've come to some things. Mostly, a lot of the trips we do is over the weekend, and so it's just a long weekend, and they're just really independent at their age. It's like it's no problem to have mom gone, and we have neighbors that we're really close to, and so they keep a watchful eye. So there's no parties and crazy stuff happening, and they're very responsible. And then I bring them when I can to give them, that piece of education, and then they also know what we're doing when we're gone, which gives them a lot of comfort knowing that, we're trying to make the world a better place and we're doing things to help their generation. So, they're definitely independent, but I don't like to be away. I always want them to come, but some trips is just too much. Yeah. Wow. Amazing. So, and what do you feel right now, Laura, is
the greatest challenge we as humans are facing as we complete 2014. Now we've had 2 years into, since 2012, in this new energy, it's always shifting and moving. As we move into 2015, what would you say, this Uranus square Pluto square, right now, what does that mean for all of us, vis-a-vis the challenge?
Well, we've had quite a few major activations of it, probably around 5. We're going to have another one mid-month, somewhere around the 14th and 15th, and then again, we're going to have the final transit sometime, I think, March or April 2015. And it kind of goes in stages. I would say the first stage was a little bit like demolition and kind of being thrown into a death transformation cycle, which is very uncomfortable for a lot of people. It manifests in ways that, for people that get really stuck on the story and they don't really get where it's all taking them, it's more about...
Like the energy behind the story?
Yeah, and if we focus on the energy behind the story and we see where it's taking us, rather than get caught up in the drama and the details of why the story is playing out and who it's coming from, we're actually getting very, very activated, and it's a very, very positive thing. But it is very uprooting because sometimes our attachments are ripped away from us. Sometimes it's time to move on, and we just don't know how to move on from certain things because we're getting both the blast of Uranus, which is very electrical, and it's very much about creation and destruction, out with the old, in with the new. And Pluto's all about sort of death, rebirth, and alchemy, which kind of hits us on the deeper layers. And so because these planets are in friction, it's really difficult to process at times, but it's only in friction based on, the challenge and the urgency that it needs to bring to us. That's the challenging part. But once we get a grip on it, which we probably have a lot more of right now as we face more of these transits, we start to recognize where it's taking us, and we feel more momentum and more inspiration to move forward, rather than how it felt like maybe last year, where it was just like, why is this happening, and feeling sort of a victim to these changes. Now it's like, oh my gosh, we're getting upgraded. Yeah. I'm letting go of things I really needed to let go of, or these breakthroughs are coming out of the breakdowns. And so, the challenge is to not lose ourselves and run to pharmaceuticals or doctors, or, I'm not saying don't go to a doctor if you feel the need, but to not get lost in the 3D stuff as a coping mechanism, and to allow it to open you up to your spirit, to your higher self, to your greater wisdom, and to trust and embrace the process a little bit more, and to know that spirit is guiding this, and these planetary forces are helping us to shift into higher earth energies. But because it can be so discombobulating and it can be so uprooting, it's like easy to just go to something else, an addiction or a medication, and not face it. And we just need to face it, and that's the challenge. Is, are we willing to face it from the right perspective and from the right parts of ourselves?
So a lot of this is happening around the 15th of December, and another phase of this letting go of the obsolete stuff, which is very much covered in my book, Shiva Speaks, Conversations with Mahavatar Babaji, which is the Shiva energy of destruction of the lower frequencies for the recreation, rebirth of the higher frequencies within us, and then, in our outer realities. So we're getting another whammy of that coming up in next week.
Yeah. Yay.
Yay. Here we go.
It gets really exhausting, though. It's just like processing. It's like,
Yeah. Well, it's as you say, it's very important to remember that we are not victims, and to not say, why me, and it's only me, to realize that we're all in this together. It's, we're all sailing in the same boat. We've all had broken hearts for, thousands of years of our current, 26,000 years of this male cycle, and that this cycle is coming to an end, and this rebalancing of the male-female energies is happening within us and outside of ourselves. But in our mundane lives, Laura, how would you shine your wisdom on this business of balancing male and female, just as we're walking around, say, in America, as you go around your business, every day in 3D reality, as we're, in all these different dimensions at the same time. But what does it mean to balance this male-female energy and this new frequency now within us?
I would say on a sort of internal, personal level, I like to see the divine feminine energy is, what inhabits the temple, and the masculine energy is like the security guard on the outside that protects it and guards it and doesn't allow negative forces in, and really stands up for that place because it's also a part of it. You know, it's a part of that landscape of sacred energies. And so we have to have sort of the warrior self that's willing to protect our emotional body and our feelings and our senses and our creativity, because if we let things in that are less than, you know, positive or are corrupting or are exploitive or vampiric, you know, then all of a sudden we're birthing some of these energies into our reality, and it ends up exacerbating the very things that we're trying to heal, because it just keeps slapping us in the face again and again and ends up being this patterning. And we have to really hold space for ourselves to really heal and, you know, get ourselves grounded. And that's where the divine masculine can come in and really protect the space and you know, create those boundaries, because it's strong. You know, it's not that the feminine is weak, is that they're in a dance together within us, and they both work together. And so for the feminine to be able to birth, and men have this going on inside them as well, they need, you know, that level of protection. And the masculine energy, you know, has a sensitivity to the feminine and knows exactly what she needs. And the feminine energy has a sensitivity to the masculine because she informs him about what she can and cannot handle. And so the two are in this beautiful relationship within us. But when we get locked into these outer programmings, it's very easy to not have our spaces protected. It's very easy to also negate our feminine energies and just act very ego and overdo like the warrior, and instead, you know, put a padlock on the feminine, and we end up suppressing the feminine when we're in our negative ego, or we lose that protection of the masculine energy and we're very vulnerable and sensitive and everything hurts us and triggers us and we can't cope. So we need to just like redefine what those roles are and sort of let all the other projections fall away and just, you know, see it like as this sacred temple, and that both, you know, play a different part or a different role. And then when we embrace our outer relationships, we know where our boundaries are needed. We know when to say no. We know when we need our own space. But we're still being loving and we're still being heartfelt. We're not having to be harsh. You know, it's a nice synthesis of standing your ground but also being loving and compassionate. And that way people really know where you stand and who you are, and they're not going to mess with you as much because you found that balance within yourself. And that helps to balance all the outer relationships.
And would you, you know, to me it's almost like the mind kind of represents, the mind body represents the male aspect, you know, the doing, making happen aspect, and the female aspect is the being, allowing, accepting, co-creating, emptying to receive, heart energy. Would you sort of agree with that? And the heart needs to be the boss now, because this is the frequency on the planet now. It's time for this feminine energy to you know, to the goddess energy to come through. And what is that goddess energy? I feel, to me, it is that heart energy, that receptivity, that sensitivity, that co-creation, and that emptiness of the womb of the Divine Mother within us, within which all co-creation can happen spontaneously, effortlessly, harmoniously, etc. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And when we think about, like, you know, the mind is very much connected to the ego. But if the mind, which is like the Gemini energy, is connecting to divine wisdom, it can be a voice for the divine wisdom instead of just in the ego and expressing egoic things like, this is what I want, this is, you know, how to get my way. The mind, you know, is able to, you know, gain the divine wisdom of the goddess and speak on behalf of her. And that's inside the male as well. And, you know, so again, it kind of goes to that warrior and that temple energy. And the heart is like the tipping point. The heart, you know, if we can align our ego with our heart, then our words are flowing greater wisdom that utilizes the mental body, but it's not cut off anymore. So I absolutely agree, and I love how you put it. So yeah,
thank you.
It's good. It's the lower mind, you know, reconnecting with the higher mind, and the heart is the bridge.
And you get into the Buddhi mind, and that is the higher octave of the mind, which opens up the third eye, and then you're in your wisdom energy, which then at a certain point it all becomes one, you know, and it's a organic, moment-to-moment, effortless, synchronistic, synergistic beingness rather than some techniques and so on. So the New Age movement and the spiritual movements have, you know, gotten a bit stuck in this theory of spirituality, and it's very much now about this embodiment. And for a lot of people, it's like, what does that mean? You know, so I'm just trying to, you know, really bring it down to its basics and simplicity of truth, simplicity, and love for our listeners and ourselves now, to clarify, where we're at on this ascension process. So just coming to the subject of multidimensionality, again, in our day-to-day lives, obviously, we're in 3D, 4D, 5D, and beyond that, and ultimately there is no dimensions. It's this, quantum field in which all possibilities and probabilities are happening simultaneously. So how would you, like as you're walking around in your world in California, if you just describe a little bit about multidimensionality on a day-to-day grounded perspective?
Well, I think the heart, again, is the great portal. I mean, we walk around and sometimes it's just very difficult to keep up with the practical things, the chores, the errands, having to go to the store, having to sit in traffic, having to be around all these people that
catch a flight, whatever.
Yeah, and so how I see it is, there's an opportunity to connect with people no matter who they are, no matter what walk of life they're in. And so instead of kind of looking at people as sheeple or to divide ourselves away from the masses because we feel like we are more spiritual or we understand things or we're awakened, yes. I tend to not even go there. I don't like to throw those labels out. I mean, maybe like as a joke here and there, like, oh yeah, sheeple, but I find that it just creates more of that cliquey separateness, and I just go out of my way to just sort of connect with people on a heart level, just going to the grocery store and just standing in line and talking to people and just knowing that, or wherever it is. Well, Whole Foods is a little easier because there's a lot of consciousness there, but, going, maybe to CVS even, or a place that just feels a little bit more like lost in the dark ages. It's like you can make a heart connection with anybody. And in actual fact, when you are willing to do that, then you're not existing so much in the 3D because you're not looking at people for their programmings or where they've been conditioned or where they're stuck or where they're wounded. You're looking at their soul and their spirit, and you're giving them a hello on that level. And in actual fact, when you do that, no matter what your surroundings are, you're experiencing a more multidimensional expression, and you can be in this sort of limited world but not be limited by it because there's more affinity going on with others because a person's dropped the judgment. And when we drop the judgment, I think we find that it's not as limiting as stuck as we feel. We do that based on our judgments more than the actual reality of it because we are changing the meaning within the structure. We might not be able to change the structure right away, but we might as well change the dynamics and the way we all relate to one another because that's the one thing we do have control over. We can be compassionate, we can be loving, we can be generous, we can be giving, and we can really make people's day, and then the heart energy increases the vibration of the planet. Yeah, we might not be able to make the governments change, but we can change the vibration between ourselves. And so that's what I do on a practical level is if I can do anything is to just raise the frequency based on being more available and being more connecting on a heart level with everybody I meet. And, of course, one has to be shut down sometimes just to I like to be in my own world.
Recharge,
too. I'm not going to go out
to
and
recharge.
to recharge.
Yeah.
But
And just to have some, we need time for our own energy, as you sort of go into the meditation, the deep inner space, and then love overflows, and then you have that just automatically flows out to all that we encounter. I love what you're sharing because, again, in the spiritual movement, the New Age movement, there's all this emphasis on seminars and workshops and healing sessions and all that, and I'm not knocking that. I'm a teacher of many modalities of energy medicine myself and have been for years, but I really love what you're saying, which is what I practice as well, which is everybody I meet, wherever I go, it's like, how can I serve? What can I share? How can I connect? Because that is the unified field of consciousness. There's no point talking about that as a great theory. That actually exists as we meet each other because we are one within, and, yet we have our unique flavors. So, and as we shift that, then everything shifts. The governments will shift. It will happen. It's not just our governments. It's each of us are also holding all these prejudices, judgments. This one's not my religion or my color or my nationality, whatever it is. So that's really, really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And on the subject of empathy and compassion, are there some simple tools we can give our listeners now to begin to trigger these states within themselves? Very sort of, non-sort of complicated, this methodology and read that book type of way, to just begin to, obviously start with themselves, because I find in my healing journey of, facilitating the healing of others on my own, is that, self-esteem and confidence and self-love is always the huge stumbling block. And then it's like, well, how do I love myself? I'm having massages and I go to spiritual things and all that sort of thing. So how to begin with triggering that self-love within oneself, and then tools for, triggering compassion for self and then therefore others.
That's great. I love all your questions, by the way.
Sorry?
I said I love your questions, by the way, because it's just getting right to the heart of the good stuff. I would say not to let your feelings control you, because if there is an insecurity that comes up, have compassion for that insecurity instead of judgment, because it's only going to perpetuate it. It's only going to make it worse, because we are going to hit walls in ourselves. We're going to, feel, maybe we don't like what we see in the mirror some days. Maybe we don't like how needy we feel when it comes to how we relate to another person. Maybe, we look at somebody else and wish we had some of their qualities, and just to step back and say, okay, this is where my self-love and compassion needs to come in. First of all, it's normal, but at the same time, it's a conditioning, it's a programming, so it's not normal in an organic way, because when we're authentic and true to ourselves, we don't go into competitiveness, and we don't go into judgment, because we're feeling really good just being ourselves. So number one is free yourself. Live your truth. Who cares what anybody else thinks? And when you are in the process of living your truth and you do hit those walls of insecurity or self-doubt or judgment, step back and give yourself a lot of compassion, knowing that this is the stuff that we're unwinding from. This is the stuff that needs to go, and to be frustrated by it is to basically judge the process that we all need to take upon ourselves. In the process is, being willing to transform a lot of these old things and to not let them control us. Because when they control us, we form personality traits that tend to hide them and cover them up, which means we act out, we blame others, we manipulate others, and we go about our day just sort of trying to run away from those things, but at the detriment of ourselves and others. So it's being very honest with the self, being very conscious in every moment, and, noticing, what is coming up and taking the time to address it maturely, with maturity. And then to look at others, if you're forming a judgment about another, it's probably stemming from a judgment within the self or an insecurity, or, just a need to just be seen and to resent maybe somebody else who's being seen for something that doesn't have a lot of worth, that might be a detriment. Just to have compassion for the fact that they are on a path too, and you might be further along, but they're going to have to unwind from all the same things that cause them to act out or hide the deeper stuff, like wounds or, other things that have caused them to have an outer persona that tricks other people and deceives other people, because they're avoiding the very work that you're looking to move through or address. And so the compassion can come from, wow, that person's going to have a lot to go through at some point when they have to face all this. And also compassion in knowing that this person also has suffered a broken heart, probably has lost a loved one, might be dealing with a sick parent, might be dealing with losses and challenges that we can't even comprehend. And so not to assume so much when we see people or what they're carrying. Even people with a lot of money that seem to have it all, they can be the most miserable people. They might be suffering with addiction and a very unhappy marriage. So we got to drop like the facade and what we see on the outside, and not hold each other to it so much, and especially starting with the self, not to try and fit into something or be something else just to appear to others like we're okay, and to just say, hey, I'm just going to be true to myself, and if people don't like it, fine, but if we don't step into it, we're never going to heal it, and we're just going to be pretty artificial. And so, I took a step doing that when I first started presenting. I admitted to people, I used to have an alcoholic tendencies and an issue. I'm completely rough around the edges, and I have a hard time, with myself, and I'm very shy, and it's hard to be up here. And that broke the ice for me. And then and I'm like, okay, now we're over all that facade stuff. Now let's talk, And so I was like, if I'm going to speak about this stuff, I'm going to take the first step in myself and have enough compassion for me to just be real when I'm talking to people, because it helps me to see, the truth of every individual that much more when I give that gift to myself.
Well, it's amazing to see how transparent you are, and that's a key for all of us. Is to be innocent, to be transparent, to be who we are. To let down the 3D facades and all these constructs that we've created of right and wrong and the polarities. And for me, the self-love piece is very much to do with, bringing out the wounded child every day. It doesn't take long. And saying, giving it a name or whatever, and saying, how are you feeling? Maybe 3 or 5 or 15 or whatever it is. And then letting that wounded part, the inner wounded child, have it say, have its little rant, whatever it is. I'm feeling freaked out, I'm feeling insecure, I'm really angry, whatever it is, and not making them wrong and bad. And then letting that part into oneself, then bringing out the divine child and saying, you're the boss now. What are you choosing for today? And usually my divine child is, like trust and relax. Ground yourself, trust and relax. And everything just follows suit after that, because then once you're in that divine child energy, well, all of us loved ourselves before the imprinting started. So that takes us to the magic, So this summer I've done 20 paintings and, so many creative things in my dance and other stuff, not just the book and, being spiritual teacher, da-da-da. And that's been so healing, just lying on the grass in Holland Park and, being in London for a while and not having to run to America every 5 seconds. I love the States, but still, not having to jump on an airplane. And that's my divine child. And, as you do that, you start youthing and you look younger, you feel younger, and you get into this co-creative energy so easily. And you do love yourself then, because it's pre-imprinting time. So you kind of feel, does that resonate with you?
Oh, absolutely. I love it.
Yeah. So this self-love, guys out there, until we learn to somehow, and it's not a learning, it's within us. We just have to start hearing the printing voice, hearing this freak out part of us and making it okay, creating a space. A large part of healing in my work, I find, is just through creating a space to listen and make whatever's happening for them. I'm sitting in Hawaii for the, sort of edits of Shiva Speaks, and I was in this, really fancy resort because I kind of fell out with my editor. I couldn't stay with him, and we were still good friends, though. This guy said, I've never told anybody, but I killed so many people in Vietnam, and I'm crying now. I've never cried in my life. I don't even know who you are, but here it is. And so just listening to that person and making it okay no matter what they're saying to you, to me that's a large part of the healing process. So if we can do that for our own wounded bit within us, then the whole day goes so much better. And in your practice, Laura, what are you finding is, some of the big issues that are coming up in the healing sessions for people that we can share, and then, share some of the wisdom around that on how to heal that?
On how to heal what exactly? You cut out a little bit.
In your sessions, what do you find is coming up again and again? For me, it's people's lack of self-love, which then leads to all the projections and the judgments and the ego thing, and being bigger than yourself and all the masks and so on. What are you finding currently in your dream team sessions? What's coming up for people a lot as a healing issue?
I'm seeing a lot of that you just mentioned, and also just the fear to create change, just people not liking their job or not really happy in their relationships, that are afraid to move out of the comfort zone and embrace new ideas and concepts. And, and I always say, set the intention. Your creative energy needs instructions. If it doesn't have instructions, it's going to match whatever mood you're in, and it's just going to supply you more and more reasons to be stuck in that mood, because our creative energy runs based on the dreams and visions and intentions we hold. But if we don't solidify it, if we don't make it known, it can get very confusing, and our creative energy can get very ungrounded, and other people can use our creative energy for their self if we're not clear with, what we want to manifest and create, and that's part of where we might give our power away. And so, because people aren't looking to take huge risks and do anything drastic, I really just encourage them to set the intention, no matter how abstract it is. It might just be a state of mind or an inner feeling you want to, integrate or embody, and and then just watch the synchronicities line up, because if we have given our creative energy instructions, we're going to notice the synchronicities and opportunities, and if we don't, we're just going to keep noticing the things that bring us down and sabotage the things we want to see happen, and it gets constantly reinforced, because we can leave the house every day with two visions. One is in alignment with our dreams and what we want to see manifest, and the other one are the things that keep encouraging us to be stuck, to be depressed, to be angry, and it's like basically and it just puts us in a loop and in a patterning that is very hard to break. And so I kind of help people break the patterning so they can start to notice how much the universe is totally got their back and is going to pick up the slack as long as they are clear with what their intentions and dreams and visions are. Because it's amazing. We're a very advanced technology, and we are generators, and we are co-creators, and we're manifestors. But if we're not operating based on the right instruction codes, we're just going to end up going down the wrong road. It's like a map, and we just get lost, really. And, sometimes we do need the scenic detour to take a break from it all and meditate and figure out what those dreams and visions are. But we don't want to waste too much time being scattered and trying to make things happen. We need those break times to just really identify what it is that, that we want to see happen. And then when we do that, then the job and the transition from that job is much easier. A new opportunity shows up and you can let go of the old. Or, more opportunities to work things out with a partner, or more synchronicities that enable a breaking off to happen without it having to be so painful and difficult. Transition with grace and ease. I think people really just want grace and ease. They're afraid of this feeling of trauma and this feeling of having to fall back on themselves. We're very traumatized in this world, and we're always seeking sanctuary and safety, but sometimes we're willing to grab at something that's not very healthy because it gives us some false sense of security, and we got to kind of be willing to replace that, but not do it so drastic that we're going to find ourselves re-traumatized.
So every morning, just give us a little example of, tomorrow morning, have you got some intentions for yourself? Like, what's the little routine? Is there a routine, or it just is bringing in that focus of attention plus intention equals manifestation? And so as I'm walking around my chores in the morning, I'm just sort of bringing in what I want to create rather than the destructive patterns of habit.
Yeah, it's really keeping track of what your thought forms are, but more so what words you use, because we can get away with all sorts of thought forms. We can feel judgments, we can feel anger, we can feel all these different things and create thoughts about it. But what words are we choosing to speak? Do our words encourage our dreams and visions? Do they encourage positive change? Or are our words, creating the very problem we're trying to get out of, or even worse, creating drama and crisis? So if we're having a hard time choosing our words wisely, and if our thought forms seem out of control, I think it's very important to do some sort of ceremony and to set aside time to set those intentions. If we're pretty darn good at daydreaming and staying pretty positive and in the flow, it's not as necessary. But when I'm finding it hard, maybe I'm just around a lot of chaos, or I'm around people that challenge me, what I do is I just hold like a crystal or a stone, and I close my eyes and I infuse it with my dream or vision or intention, or I write it down and let the stone or crystal sit on it for a little while, and then I just put it in my pocket. And every time I need to reinforce it or remind myself, I just pull it out and hold it and close my eyes and take a deep breath, because it holds, that energy. But I think writing is really good. It's a great tool, just keeping a flow alive where you just are constantly expressive, because if we internalize too much, it can get real toxic, and it just plugs us up and it can block our creative energy. And so being creative and allowing a constant flow to happen, whether it's being artistic or musical or expressive with words, we need to constantly, for things to manifest, have an outpouring of energy, into our environment. But we, of course, are going to find that some things come out that we don't want to see manifest. So we have to know the difference between the stuff that needs to be thrown on the curb to be picked up by the trash guy or composted, and what stuff, we want to illuminate and empower and shine the light on, And as long as we can tell the difference, then whatever thought comes up in our head, we can say, hey, that goes to the compost pile, or, wow, I said something I don't want to energize, I'm going to cancel, clear, delete it. I mean, around our house, we very often cancel, clear, delete. We say something, oh, gosh, I wish I didn't say that, cancel, clear, delete. That doesn't really help us, so let's get rid of it. And it's just, daily maintenance and having little tools and different things that you can have as a default to remind yourself how to keep, a good flow going. Beautiful, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So this goddess energy, like for the boys, for the men, how would you sort of shine your wisdom on the men embracing their goddess wisdom arising within them in a way that they don't start feeling like pansies or something? I know that sounds silly, but even for the most spiritual of men, sometimes it's a little bit like. I'm in touch with my feminine side, but Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, I think just, integrity. It's like integrity doesn't mean you have to be, all in touch with your feminine side or overly egoic. It's just you're committed and devoted to integrity, to being a good person, to, watching how people are reacting to you and stepping back a little bit and checking yourself and asking yourself, is there a better way? Is there a better approach? I mean, men have to be, it's like there's a fine line between how to do all this, because there's that whole feminist thing where women want to be equal with men, but yet we have to understand the differences too. Feminism movements have a lot to do with women becoming men. Women fighting war, women having equal rights. Well, that should be a given. We shouldn't just be excited that we're able to do things that men are able to do. We should have had that from the get-go. It's more about that programming and that feeling of, we're making big progress as women, but we're really not. Yeah, that should have been taken care of a long time ago. That should have always been our rights. So, yes, on a political level, we've got that. Now let's put that aside. Okay, we got more equality. Good. But what is really lacking here, And men have to understand that there is a difference, and women have to understand it too. And we are equals, and there is a necessity for balance, but there's differences here. Women are built differently. We have deeper sensitivities. We function a lot more from our emotional body. And men are very aggressive, and they tend to, be in stature very different in a lot of ways. Not to say that there aren't times where it's the opposite, but the general rule is,
happens, yeah.
Yeah, there's always going to be a case where there's a woman.
I feel now it's very much about, as we've said, the male, female in each of us. So the sort of integration for a man as well of his masculine and feminine energy would be a man who's, assertive and dynamic, but at the same time sort of sensitive and allowing and, as you say, in integrity and connected to heart and compassion, empathy, and service. Usually when you are connected to the heart energy, to self-love, to meditation, to healing, call it what one will, these are just words, but, that energy of oneness, then service is a natural flowering of that energy, is it not? And so, I feel that men like Dr. Dream that are in service, they are more connected, don't you feel, to their feminine energies?
Yeah, but I mean, it's amazing, and this isn't about Dr. Dream, it's amazing how much programming still exists in people, and that's why integrity has to be number one, because you can have the most sensitive and spiritual person that's still dealing with a lot of patriarchal programming. You can deal with women that aren't very sensitive at all and act more like men. It's like there's no generalities. Exactly. Women can be patriarchal, men can be patriarchal, men can be incredibly sensitive, women can be incredibly sensitive, and it is about the balance of the masculine and feminine, but because we're not going to get there overnight, and it's going to take a lot of processing and work, we have to just focus on integrity. Am I being good to the people around me? Those kind of questions need to come up. Am I being good to myself? Am I walking my truth? Am I in service, like you said? And am I being abrasive and cold? Is there a better approach?
And is my thought matching my word, matching my deed? To me that is crucial. People say something, do something, and it's all the action is somewhere else. To say I love somebody, that doesn't really mean anything unless it's followed by the action. And so that thought matching the word, matching the deed, that is integrity. That is very important for us. And as we come into that integrity, the greatest fruit of that is for ourselves. It instantly gives you peace. It gives you synergy, synchronicity, harmony, balance, and so much more. And co-creation becomes, something that just begins to happen then. And you come into a stream, and it's all in that constructive, co-creative zone, as opposed to destructive, habit, etc.
And that's why words are so important, because the thing is, we're going to get triggered and we're going to feel all sorts of feelings come up. And a man might see a woman cry and say, oh, gosh, not again. Or a woman might feel like the man is being too aggressive or this or that and think to herself, oh, not this again. And, everybody, needs to just, look at how they're affecting those around them and maybe think of a better approach and not be about, oh, that's her problem or, oh, that's his problem. It's like we're all co-creating this together. Let's all step back. And communication is an art. It's not a burden. It's an art form. And the more we can speak from our heart and really listen to each other and find constructive ways to communicate so that we're not constantly pushing each other's buttons and bringing up childhood wounds and saying things in a way that, the tone just is off-putting. It's like, Like let your words be like music, let it come from the heart, then it's easier to not only listen, but it's also easy, to respond to, and great breakthroughs and understanding can come from it. Because what I find with a lot of clients and just in life, that it's the tone of voice, it's the words that are chosen that create the argument. But if it were worded differently and if the tone was different, it could completely work out and actually be very bonding and be very connecting. So our words can either help us to heal and get closer together, or they can drive people apart. And the thing that determines what our words are is having a bit of self-control, because if we act upon every impulse or trigger or feeling, we're not going to say things that are pleasing to others. But if we can step back and just think about what the best way to share it is and be very conscious with the way we word it, it's unbelievable the things that can happen. But if we just are constantly reactive and we're not thinking about how things sound, it's not going to create the space for real sharing. And, it's going to be hard to deprogram each other, to just deprogram completely and totally, no matter how spiritual we are. And so this is what we really need to do for each other, to support one another, and to recognize that this is a big priority right now, because we can grow into the spiritual beings that we very much are most of the time. But the facade doesn't always prove that that's what a person's truly embodying on every level. So we got to just encourage each other to get there with less judgment and blame and all this stuff that keeps us stuck in these spirals.
Projection, which is, where the mind just puts the shadow onto somebody else. I think whatever's happening, before we sort of say you, this, that, or the other, we should see where is that in ourselves first. And then
Absolutely.
it's not always in ourselves. I don't agree in this New Age thing of, it's all within, in other words.
I don't either.
I really don't agree with that. But you start with yourself and you say, okay, is there a little bit of that gunk in me right now? What can I do to shift that? And then I can maybe communicate with the other when I'm coming from a clearer space myself. And until then, see, am I projecting, or is this something I need to communicate, as you say, with a little more compassion? And I think us Librans are good at that, aren't we, Laura? Generally speaking.
Yeah,
I think sometimes we go crazy, but we're quite diplomatic, and we really are into harmony, we want harmony on this planet. We have this Venusian energy in us, So
what I've found that really works. Keep going.
No, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, because you just reminded me with the Libra thing, that there is such a huge desire for that. And I think, basically there's a little bit of Libra in everybody. Of course, it's a little bit more pronounced in the sun sign ones. But I find I get triggered really easily. But what I do is I give myself a day to sit with it. I let myself sleep on it. If it's still bugging me the next day, then I'm going to go to that person and talk to them about it. But if I wake up and I'm like, what was that? I can't even remember it. Then I know that it's not that big a deal and it's probably my own stuff. Or if I wake up and I feel like something in me that's constricting and it's reminding me of something in my past, it's like we just have to kind of sit with this stuff for a little bit longer, because it's just so easy for people to pounce and blame. And I just love what you're saying, because it just, reminds me of just a lot of what I've found myself doing, which really works, which is to step back, give it even a day, and see if it really has that much of a power over the situation, or if it really
this spending time alone is so crucial. I think, again, in the New Age spiritual movement, everybody's, so busy doing all the spiritual stuff that it's like, did you just spend some time just being, and not just the theory of being, but actually go to the park and just stare in space or look at, nature or whatever that is, because, there's so much going on in the collective that, myself, I work with morphogenic healing energies and so on, and I'm, in the middle of London, which is, sort of like an epicenter on this planet. And unless I go into nature, unless I go to the park, sometimes I don't know whether the energies I'm feeling are my own energies or this morphogenic energy field that I'm within, and where many of us are empaths, we're sensitive and so on. So that time alone, to say I have no time, well, people say I'm abundant, but I have no time. But if you have no time, that's not abundance, We can all make time. Time is bendable. We can do stuff with it. It's not this 3D, from this time to that time. It doesn't really exist. Our thought can recreate and change most things in our reality. Would you not agree, Laura?
Oh, I totally agree. And I mean, we have the opportunity to just make every moment, not just sacred, but an opportunity to utilize the energy in a way that really serves us. I mean, if one's standing in line or having to be patient, it's a perfect time to just space out and meditate and dream, instead of fighting against everything and losing it or feeling like every day is like a battle zone. It's like, well, let it be a tool. Let it work for you. And I do that when I look at the sky and I see chemtrails. I say to myself, thanks for reminding me of how powerful we all are, because you wouldn't be doing this if you weren't threatened by us, I don't look at it and get pissed off anymore. And it's just I use everything that sucks, and I turn it into a tool to either empower me or to help me meditate
humor,
in that moment.
We have humor, and I think that's another key, is it not? I mean, just to say that no matter what's going on, it's a storyline. This is a holographic reality. It's not fixed. We are the stage director, movie producer of the dramas of our life, of this reality as it exists. And we are, we can tune in and change the lens or change the act or, change the perspective is the most important part of it, because there's a story within a story within a story. And even people like Hitler played a role. They played a role. The dark defines the light. And so the humor, and I think you've got a brilliant sense of humor, Laura, and you don't take yourself too seriously. Am I right in observing that?
Yeah, I mean, I've had my bouts of that before, and I'm like, this is not working for me at all. If and it's just the pressure builds up, and I'm like, no, I dropped that a long time ago. And I was raised around really, really high-strung people too, and I just would, and I'd be like, just mellow out, like it's not that bad. And then I started to realize when I became a parent, like, oh my gosh, I'm starting to act like what I was raised around. I'm starting to get really uptight and just really stressed, and I'm like, I got to go back to the real me, because that's not me. That's part of what I picked up on, and it's helped, because it's helped me to transmute a lot of the stress that I see in others when it comes to global stuff. I'm like, no, it's understandable, but recognize that it's not a destination. It's your initial reaction, but it's going to take you on a journey, and let it guide you into your truth. Let it guide you into your creative resources. Anything that's uncomfortable is not the destination. It's the beginning of a transformation. But a lot of why we fear anything. A lot of why we fear anything is because there's unfamiliar aspects of ourselves we haven't called forth yet. So instead of remain in fear, be on a quest of discovery to pull up the parts of yourself that know exactly how to handle everything that's going on.
Brilliant. So we've got 12 minutes left. Just very quickly, like a minute each on these things. 2015, what do you feel that's about energetically? I mean, just in a very simple way, for humanity now.
I feel, just when I look at the energy when you said that, I just see a flower bursting out of the cement, and just like major growth coming out of what seems almost impossible for some, or what we might not see as being attainable, that it absolutely is, and that we're busting through, and we're really beginning to blossom. I mean, we're at the peak of a major cycle, and we are miracle beings. I mean, creating miracles comes quite naturally. I mean, that's who we truly are, but we tend to think it's the most unusual thing.
2015 you see as a time now when we're coming out of this tunnel of change and into this energy of co-creation, and what do I choose to create, rather than focusing on the destruction, the poverty, the lack, the fighting, and so on this planet.
Yeah, I feel like we're all emerging out of that, and we're blossoming into our true selves, and from there we can think more clearly. We're not thrown into survival. We're really linking up and unifying and figuring out how to solve all this without going to the source of where it all started from, and that we're much more self-sufficient and much more, I just see nothing but good things. I mean, I think we've been through the worst. I mean, we're going to still hit difficult energies, but
Yeah, and how do you, ascension, how would you define that in a sentence? Obviously our show is very much about energy, guys, behind the words. This is not just words from Laura and myself. We bring in that energy of multidimensionality, love, the goddess energy, and so on, with and behind our words. So what is that energy of ascension for humanity waking up here now, Laura, in this now moment?
I think it's more about the internal shift, and so to me, it has to do with, expanding as a being, expanding beyond the programmings and conditionings and ancestral patterns and wounds of the past, and recognizing those wounds as jewels of wisdom. And, and then because we're really growing and awakening and being true to ourselves, we're able to link up with others, which is unity consciousness, which really is connected to the stargates of this planet. When our DNA upgrades, it connects with the 12 stargates on the planet, and then the 13th, which is right in the center of this earth. but we can't unify if we don't know ourselves. You know, if we don't know ourselves and we're not true to ourselves, we're only unifying based on programmings and conditionings that'll cause us to fight and cause us to be in competition with each other. So we can't unify until we do the work first. And that to me is what ascension is knowing yourself, being authentic. Yeah, being authentic and true to who you are, and then linking up with others and inviting them to do the same, because diversity and oneness is diversity and harmony is true oneness.
Beautiful, beautiful. And do you feel that you're connecting a lot to the Pleiadians and the other beings, or do you see it more as everything is a oneness soup within you right now? You know, because obviously you're shifting and transforming a lot as well on your journey from when you began, whenever that was, on this earth walk to now.
Well, the Pleiadians have been. Yeah, I've been making contact with them through other people that they're people come out of the woodwork just saying, I'm really being bothered by these Pleiadians that want me to tell you something really, really important or do something, to help you with this or that.
I see you as a Pleiadian being. Am I kind of right? I mean, obviously there's no one thing.
They're like, you haven't been here for so long, and the last time you were with us. And, I'm totally, that's a star system I've spent a lot of time on. And so I've had my own contacts, but I've sort of shut that part down because I'm doing so much inner processing. I'm doing so much other work that they're showing up through people, and people are like, hey, we got a message for you from these Pleiadians. And, I usually have direct connect, but I just try and stay directly connected to my spirit and my own inner work. And if communication needs to be had with any other beings, I'm totally open to it, but I'm not making as much contact me personally right now. I'm just really just kind of focused in on, they show up from time to time when I work on my breathing.
On your heart and soul, would you say?
Yeah, that's always there. That's always been my work from the get-go. But the other beings tend to show up when I work on my presentations to help guide me in the information I share. But when it comes to me as an individual, I totally focus on my own heart and soul and connection to spirit.
Wow. Wonderful. And this business of money, just in, again, one sentence from the energetics point of view, how do you see the new money system playing out from a wise perspective, goddess perspective, as the systems begin to crumble?
Yeah, well, there's either the controlled collapse of the economy to bring us into the more sort of chipped and controlled currency type deal, or there's the collapse of it because we have linked up and we found a different way and we're starving the system and we don't need it anymore. That's the intention and hope that I have, and that's what I'm working towards.
What do you see as the new replacement, like a exchange system or like a more grassroots system? I think
people are going to find their pods and their soul family and work, more, just kind of like, okay, let's all join up, let's work together, and there'll be like these different pods that all link up into like the greater spirit energy and basically the abundance of Gaia and, what she's going through as a planet, being in alignment with the galactic plane, and that will all just sort of be unifying on those principles in smaller communities with the grand sort of central sort of government being, mutual love and respect and encouraging us all to be leaders, and the governments will just sort of be like, oh, great, they figured it out. They don't need us anymore. That's the whole reason they didn't accept the help from Sally and Thor and the beings from Venus, because they didn't think we would rely on them anymore and we would lose our dependency on them. So we got to take the initiative and say, hey, let's do it, because that's what they're worried about. So let's just go ahead and run with it, and that's exactly what is going to starve them. That's my hope. If we don't do that, I see more of the controlled collapse of the economy leading us more into an enslaved system, or a lot more events that threaten us on a extinction level, things like pandemics, things like, superstorms. But I think we're already over that hurdle, and we totally have the upper hand because the frequency we're holding and what we're connected to has basically knocked that timeline out.
We're in the positive timeline now, and I think many of us are already, a little bit beyond the whole money situation and are, really trusting and relaxing and co-creating. Yeah.
Yeah, and it really attracts people like a magnet. Anybody who's still stuck in the system is going to more find people like us than get more stuck, because nobody's really getting any benefit from it,
Yeah. Yeah, so we have to be the way showers, and that's every one of us out there, not just Rashmi or Laura or, Matt Khan or whoever it is. Every single one of us has this potential now. So let's keep going, Let's not stop focusing on our governments and become self-governing and just step it up now, and dare and jump and start simply. Each day just do something simple that gives one more power and gets one off the mortgage thing and the rat race stuff. And definitely give up competition and all of that stuff, because that's a tosser-loser game. So thank you so much, Laura, for being on the show. I wish we could do more, and I hope we'll do another again, because there's always so much to cover. Thank you for being who you are and for the incredible work that you do on this planet. I mean, it is just mind-blowing, which is what we need, the blowing of our minds.
You're amazing. It's so incredible to share with you. I'm just so grateful for our connection, and thank you for having me on. It's been wonderful.
I love you very, very much.
You.
And sending you a lot of love and energy. Take care. Lots of love. And do share, Laura, before you go, just share your website, please, with us.
It's cosmicgaiasophia.com. And if that's hard to remember, just find me on Facebook, Laura Magdalene Eisenhower.
Yay. Love you. Bye.
Okay. Love you. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you, guys, for being on this third segment of the Rashmi Khilnani Show. Please check out the previous shows on Blog Talk Radio Archive, Soul Talk Radio Archive, or RashmiKhilnani.com and my blog section. And look forward to doing that show very soon. We're going to have all sorts of amazing speakers on our show to help you to begin to, take a deeper role in your self-healing and co-creation on the planet as we birth this incredible heaven on earth age here now. So a wonderful Christmas to all of you, and hope to talk to you very soon. Much love, and a big thank you to Jeremy for manning the show from Florida. Hugs and kisses from London. Namaste, Rashmi. Bye.